Hi, I'm James Caan. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Ben Searls, the founder of Ignata Finance. Ignata Finance has just experienced an exit with RE, where Ben has had the opportunity not only to kind of start to build, to scale his business, but actually to see a successful exit where he's been able to sell to one of the largest executive search firms in the world. And what I wanted to do was really share with you a bit about Ben's journey on how he's kind of began the journey and started literally from scratch, on his own, on a desk with a phone, and built the business to this point. So delighted to have you this morning, Ben.
Thanks, James. Thank you.
As always, Ben, let's start from the beginning. Tell us a bit about you.
Fine. So my name's Ben Searls. I started life in recruitment back in 2005 with one of the big recruitment businesses, Badenoch and Clark, and had a wonderful 12 years there. Started doing temp billings and running perm desks, and just did the whole suite of activities at B&C. I went down the leadership route, and at the end of 12 years, I was leading multi-functions and multi-geographies. 12 brilliant years at one of the biggest recruitment companies in the UK.
What was the size of Badenoch and Clark, Ben? How many kind of people, what kind of revenue?
Long time ago now, but I would say there was at least 400 or 500 people in the UK. I was leading a commerce and industry team of over 70. So it was a decent sized business.
And the business that you ran of the 70 people, what were the kind of revenue numbers, just to kind of put it into context of scale?
Yeah, we're doing about 2.5 million in GP across those. Obviously, we hired a lot of junior people who were doing their first ever role in recruitment. So it was far more around volume over high value, but it was a decent sized business.
And at that kind of juncture, Ben, 12 years, big corporate, good successful career, good recognition, management, etc. What was that trigger point that said, I want to do this for myself?
Honestly, it was watching someone else do it. I had seen a friend that I played football with successfully leave a big corporate, go into a venture capital backed environment and exit. And a bit of me just wanted that, frankly. At the end of the day, we don't do this just for love. It's to make money. And I'd watched him do incredibly well. So I was very motivated at that stage in my career, two young kids, and was thinking about how do I really realise proper wealth. And as great as the career at B&C was and was going to continue, it was only going to be a salary, PAYE and bonus. And I really wanted more.
And when you're at that juncture, when you're kind of evaluating, I want to do this myself, there's a number of different options you can go down. You can go to the bank and get a loan. You can go to a VC. Or you can do it yourself. You can do friends and family. What is the thought process of that?
I was convinced that it was just going to be Vicky and I. So, my wife, Vicky, was our best interim biller, and thus I could rely on her for GP, and I was okay at leading people. So it felt like the right combination, but ultimately we thought we would just go and do it for ourselves. And I think we looked at the reality of we'd probably be doing that for 30 more years, and that's relatively soul destroying for us. So we binned off the idea of doing it on our own. We looked at going down venture capital route, but a lot of those firms that I met were not recruitment experts per se. They were very good at scaling businesses, but they hadn't actually done the day job that I was doing, and thus didn't necessarily understand where we would then scale and exit. And so then obviously I reached out to your good self as another option. And the thing for me that, you've done the day job and you have grown a business far more successfully than the one that I've just created. But I think it's absolutely key that you're not just providing, capital, which is important in any startup, don't get me wrong, especially with Vicky doing interim. We needed some serious capital to run a day book of the success we were expecting. But the key thing was really around getting some advice on how I scale, how I get ready for an exit from day one, not just thinking about that 2 weeks before you're going through that process. And so it's really around that mentoring that I needed, and that's why I reached out.
And tell us a bit about that journey, Ben. So we've created a brand, Ignata Finance. For day one, we've got a website. There's you and Vicky. What kind of happened from kind of evolving from that to kind of a 10 to 12 man business, going from kind of 0 to 2.5 million GP? What does that journey look like, and how did you do that?
I think, again, came down to a very early conversation with you, which was you and Vicky is not really enough either. Who's the biggest competitor? And that was a funny question to be asked because I knew who it was. It was Steve Revel at Michael Page. And he was the one person that we'd interacted with a really good degree of respect, but as competitors. So instantly, again, going through that process, I'd have probably just sat in our kitchen and just done it with Vicky and I, but to have more ambition to go and get your biggest competitor, which is why I reached out to Steve and said, what are your thoughts, motivations? And the timing was perfect for him. He was at that critical point in his career too, where he thought, this is perfect. So the three of us started in October 2017. And then, unsurprisingly, we all hired people that we knew and we trusted from previous firms once we were out of our restrictions. And then we were able to start looking at creating a team around us, because very early memory was, you won't be able to sell this business if it's all about you. If it's all Ben, Vicky, Steve show. So you've got to find high quality people that you trust, that can leverage your relationships, but can build their own. So, quite quickly we grew to 5 people, to 7 people, to 10 people within 18 months. We didn't not make any mistakes there. Of course, when you're growing, I think, again, I was encouraged to make mistakes and to, take those risks with various people, and some paid off and some didn't pay off. But, very quickly within 3 years, we were at 12 people and starting to make proper revenue. There was only 2 months in the entire time where we made a loss, which I think,
amazing.
If you speak to Deepak, it's probably a first. So we had a great focus on interim, which kept that revenue coming in, and the people that we hired were just adding to that every month. And
in terms of that journey, tell us a bit about the customer base.
Yeah.
Who is the kind of Ignata Finance customer?
That has changed the most. So when we set the business up, the thought process was we were just going to create a premium brand for what we used to do. So Steve, Vicky and Ben were best known for recruiting in the Southeast in a contingent manner, and really good at that and beating the competition, but we were very good contingent recruiters. And I think the opportunity to start your own business also gives you the chance to reimagine what you can do and how you can interact with customers. So the old clients became old clients, and we started working with customers that wanted to engage purely in an exclusive or retained manner. And a lot of the old clients just didn't want to do that. They were used to working in that contingent manner. And so I think one of the greatest successes for us, even within a year, was having the element of risk and trust in ourselves to go out there and redesign how we wanted to interact with our customers. So now an Ignata Finance customer is private equity backed. We don't typically work with huge organizations. One of the key reasons for that was around payment terms and understanding the commercial element to that, whereas at Badenoch and Clark, you were encouraged to sign up at 15% on 90-day payment terms, and it's a completely different world for us. So a lot of them are private equity backed, a lot of them are in the consumer space, and this huge repeat custom now over the last 6 years. So that's been the biggest transformation, actually, is the level of retained work. It's all exclusive, it's high quality, it's senior, but we've built in a really good junior and transactional team underneath that, because they can make the most of the relationships that we've already fostered.
And it's mainly accountancy and finance is your area of specialisation.
Yeah, so we have 2 disciplines. Accountancy and finance is our bread and butter, CFOs down to purchase ledger clerks. But we recently launched a technology discipline as well, which is paying great dividends, because the individual that's come in there has been able to take the relationships from the finance teams and mushroom those out as well.
What's your average fee?
22k.
22,000 sterling.
And if you'd asked me that 5 years ago, it would have been 600-750.
Very good.
Yeah.
And typically, as a business, what have you been averaging in terms of productivity per head? What are you?
Yeah. So again, if I think back to my old days at B&C, we were targeting anything between 7 and 10k per month per person. Our lowest ebb has been 12.5 to 15. But pre-2023, which was a challenging year economically, we were averaging 18 to 20 per person. So it's really, really increased that level of productivity.
So Average fee 22,000.
Yeah.
Average kind of productivity per head between 18 and 20,000, which
Yeah.
is excellent in any market metrics. In terms of the relationship, Ben, so walk us through. So you interact with myself and the team on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
What does a typical board meeting look like? Where do you get the value from the relationship?
So first and foremost, I think the board meetings are incredibly formal, which is a really good thing, because I think we have been mentored throughout to be thinking like an institutional backed business, and that was a head scratcher early on. But for doing that, just from 6 months in to today, it's meant that we were ready for an exit. The conversations that we have aren't about, is Joe Bloggs, doing well? Is Jane Bloggs going to make it? That's for me to run my team, my culture, the way that I want. But it's far more business and commercial driven around, what KPIs are you really focusing in on? So your mix of business, is it interim? Is it perm? How are you increasing that average fee? How are you driving your margin? Cash collection is something I never talked about at Bainock and Clark. And within 6 months, Vicky, Steve and I felt like mini credit controllers. Why? We went through COVID and we went through that together. And that was an amazing example where those board meetings became weekly chats. I remember it, like it was yesterday, where we were talking about Company X, how are you going to get them paid? Deepak was supporting us on that. That there were little tips in those weekly conversations that got us through COVID that we would never have got through, because Deepak and yourself just been through it numerous times. So those board meetings are super valuable. But if I'm really honest, it's probably the WhatsApp messages 5 times a week that I go to you on, and it could be just, I'm 99% sure this is the right decision. Can you just pull it together? And I think one of the key things that you've got me to think about is so what could go wrong? Let's just unpick it. So it sounds like a great idea. Let's assume you go with that. What's going to go wrong? And just thinking about it that way has really helped me unpick every idea and every strategy really well. And don't get me wrong, we've made some mistakes, but A, I've been allowed to make those mistakes on my own, and B, when they've not gone well, there's been no I told you so. It's just been great. So what have you learned? And how you're going to develop, the business differently. And I've found that actually particularly enjoyable, weirdly, making those mistakes.
What's the correlation, Ben, between payment terms and receiving dividends?
You don't get paid your dividends. It's fascinating. The dividend piece is so new to you when you're in a corporate environment. It just feels like something that should just happen. And it's not. This is your own business. Why would you pay yourself a dividend if you've not received that money? So we've worked incredibly closely with the credit controllers and built relationships with them to really focus on that. And our average payment terms have fluctuated between 14 and 21 days, which is in this
amazing,
sector is ridiculous. But that's because the three of us have got on the phone to our customers and said, "This is our gig. We need to get paid." And I think people really buy into that. When you're at B&C, it's just get in line.
Yeah. So we had a cracking year in 2022.
Yeah.
So I think 2.7 million GP, 800,000 profit.
Yeah. 880.
880, which is outstanding.
Yeah.
2023, very challenging year, and probably was what kind of led to the exit, because difficult market conditions, we hired a bunch of people, they weren't producing, we had to let them go. Profits fell from kind of 880 down to 400.
50, I think 450.
450.
Yeah.
How did the exit conversation, how did that all start?
I think just before getting into that, 2023, we stood still from a revenue perspective. So we did 2.25 in 2023 when most of our competitors were going backwards. The reason that the profits dropped was because we had believed the hype in 2022. We believed that it was going to continue. We hired significantly around non-fee earners. We built new disciplines. And it was the right thing to do. Who was to know that 2023 would be so difficult? But we acted sensibly, and we were able to, sort of make those changes within 6 to 12 months. But obviously, I then reached out to you and felt like, okay, if we're hovering around 500,000 in EBIT, how big's that journey to exit? Because we've been going 6.5 years. I think what was really refreshing is an exit doesn't have to be a number. It doesn't have to be 2 million quid EBIT, 1.5, whatever it might be. It has to be, can you find the right partner and where you are on your journey as an organisation. So how it came about is I reached out to you and I said, look, I'm getting approached all the time. I don't know which way to look. I'd much rather be led around a sensible conversation where you think this business could fit in really well. And I know that you've obviously sold Walter James to ZRG. I know James Absalom. I spent time with him way before he exited, and I've seen from afar how well that business has done in its new stable, to the extent that I know the consultants well within his team. So it's not just hearing it from the top guy, but I've also seen people that were billing 200k in previous life, and now they're doing 200k a quarter. So why? Could we find a home in that stable? And so you came to me and said, look, just let me have a conversation with them. If it's a non-brainer, let's not waste any time. And I got introduced to Justin Pinchback, who's their Chief Revenue Officer, who was amazing. Within 3 minutes of having the conversation where we thought we were going to talk about some cross-selling opportunities, he was like, I can totally see this. And his eyes lit up and my eyes, quickly lit up. And he could see that 2 + 2 may equal 6, because they've got a wonderful client base in the US and further afield, but the UK and Europe market is still very fledgling. And they've got some really good people doing great quality work, but an acquisition of our size could really propel them into Europe. And so that was incredibly exciting. The customer base is very similar. As I was saying earlier, our customer is typically private equity backed. There's a lot in multiple sectors, but consumers being a great area. Guess where they're strongest? In private equity, in consumer. So they could see that there's a lot of cross-pollination with their client base over here, and we could help deliver that. And vice versa, we could support them in North America.
So the conversation came about where I've introduced you to a potential buyer. Yeah. You've had a couple of conversations, and you're starting to feel the culture, and there's a really good people mix there. We're then in a position where you, myself, Vicky and Steve get together and we kind of debate, is this something we want to do?
Yeah.
Do you think that was kind of forced upon you, or do you think you forced it upon me? How do we arrive at doing that?
Yeah, 150% wasn't forced on either side. I think there was no desire for you to exit us, and there was no desire for us to exit tomorrow. Clearly, we got into bed with you because we wanted to exit, having scaled. And we'd scaled to a decent degree, but we weren't quite where we wanted to be. 500,000 EBIT's not that exciting. 12, 13 people isn't that exciting. But when the opportunity came about, it just felt right. And for me, yes, the money is important, but we're there for 3 to 10 years. We need to work with people that we really want to work with. And having looked at other options, the cultural fit was probably the most important thing versus the consideration. So we spent a lot of time getting to know the team. There was no financial information shared for 5 or 6 meetings. It was simply about customers. It was simply about, if we work together, how would you do this? How could you add value to us? And how could we add value to you? And they've got a platform for huge growth. And, frankly, from a fee earning perspective, Steve and I will hover around the 400 to 500 GP a year. Vicky will do $1 million. But we all think we could double that. But we can't do that in Ignata Finance territory. Otherwise, we might go up in 5% each year. But to get where we really want to get to, something needs to change. And the ZRG platform, from a customer base, from a technology piece, from quality of people, is insane. Absolutely incredible. The thing I've been most blown away is the quality of the individuals that I've met, and I've met a lot. It felt like a really natural home.
Ben, what was the value that you received from both the RE and the HB team through this transaction?
Yeah. So I've genuinely, I'm not just saying this because I'm on camera, I've honestly seen value from day one. I'm not sure everyone will always say that, right? I'm being completely authentic. I've always seen value from day one, because the way that we articulated it was, you're going to need us most at the end. But to make sure that isn't a jump from 1 to 10, we're going to get there gently throughout the time we're working together. So I genuinely saw value, as did Steve and Vicky, throughout those tricky periods during COVID, about 2023. But where the engine really comes to life is at the back end of the process. Because if I think about, if I was doing this on my own, Ignata Finance is Ben Searls Limited, I'd have spent a fortune on advisors. I'd have spent a fortune on lawyers and accountants. And I've been going into it in a black hole. And the opportunity to get this wrong is significant. And just on the way up on a train this morning, I was talking to a friend who's going through this. And I was listening to her thinking, I don't need to do that. I don't need to spend that. I haven't had to talk to them. And she's doing all of that on the never that a deal might happen. And the beauty of, so your management fees throughout the period of time, but really where they come to life is in that period where you're actually going through a transaction, and the due diligence, the work from Mark and Deepak and Pav and the finance team, Duncan and yourself, is just incredible. And you don't really know what you don't know until you get into that period where heads of terms are starting to be negotiated. And then you're thinking about, but what about my life? So fine, I'm happy with that consideration, but what happens after that? Am I going to get paid the same? What's my base? What's my bonus structure? Will there be equity in Topco? I don't know. All of these things. And I think you were very helpful in saying, well, A, you've been through that specifically with this organisation, with Walter James and ZRG. They're highly trusting of us as a HBRE community because James has done such a great job in their new world. And so the value was really about all of the stuff that I'm no good at. I'm good at recruiting, but I'm not good at selling my business. So to take all of that away and effectively just, sort of help manage it was incredible.
Ben, if you were, as you say, Ben Searls Limited, with the same business with the same EBIT, do you think you would have got the same deal?
I wouldn't even got a deal. I think so many people, I advise on 2 other recruitment companies who want to scale and exit, and they won't mind me saying that, they talk a great game, they're not remotely close to it. And I'm using my experience through this to help, garner that. And I think that's absolutely key. We wouldn't have had a deal. ZRG wouldn't have been available, interested. They wouldn't know who the hell we are. And, the other approaches that I have had have been numbers that you'd walk away from within 3 seconds. So not only was the deal really good, but also the way that it was structured. And I think, credit to you and Larry for having that conversation in New York. And, I remember you coming back and saying, a really sensible, both parties are really, really happy with this. What are your thoughts? And it was incredible.
And, if you were talking to one of the founders within RE who's growing his business and he's working with us, what advice would you give him on how he kind of progresses his journey with us to achieve what you've achieved?
Probably echo what you said to me, which was focus on the business. Too many people get distracted by who they're going to sell to and, what's the magic number. And I think something that you said to me, because I did get distracted by that at times, at least twice in that 6.5-year period, I would say just focus on you, focus on building a brilliant business with great customers that are loyal and, pay you well, build an amazing culture, build a team that you are really proud to call your team. And actually the rest will come, because being part of the RE world, I know this, you get so much traffic, from PE or trade saying, we need a cybersecurity business. We want a business that focuses on Scandinavia. We would love to get into the legal market. And you're able to go, I don't have that, save yourself time, or I do have that. Guys, would you like to have a chat? And I remember when we were in Monaco once and there was a conversation where someone was interested in a search business like ours. And you said, look, it's up to you, dude. I had a conversation, didn't go anywhere, culturally wasn't right, and we moved on. There was no, you should have that chat, or I think they'd pay well because they were a Scandinavian business, the premiums are typically good. It was a 3-minute conversation. This is going to go nowhere. And that was great, great to have the access to the opportunity, but then we don't need to take it any further if it's not right for us.
Just in terms of when founders are coming into this relationship, the typical fear is, I'm a minority shareholder. Will I be able to run the business? And, RE has a control in the business. Is that going to jeopardize me achieving what I want? So I think there's 2 questions there, Ben. So firstly, being a minority shareholder in the business, how did that impact the way you ran the business and how you operated?
So I felt like a majority shareholder. It felt on a day-to-day basis like it was my business, our business. Yes, you were there for support and guidance. I've never ever been told what to do. Maybe call you back once or twice, but apart from that, so it never feels like that. And for people that are going through that process, I would 150% condone. It's never felt like that, and it's easy to say, well, that's great, you're making money. But I also know businesses that have had a tougher time than us, and they've had exactly the same experience. What's really useful is that they have access to all of us. However many people are in the portfolio. Again, it's not told to do it, but you can go and speak to the guys at IGA, have a chat with the guys at Ignata Finance, because we're all at different levels in our sort of journey. And that I found that really useful. And there have been things that I've taken from different businesses within the portfolio, focus on culture, focus on customer, whatever that might be, and just taking the best bits of that and being able to really maximize it.
And I think the other question is, even though, and I think you're probably in a better position today than you've ever been before, to really realize and appreciate it's not the percentage you own, it's what it's going to be worth.
Completely.
Because you could have earned 100% and got half of what you got now.
Yeah.
So actually, the equity, but all the way down the line, it was never that clear until today. And I think having just done the deal is probably the one time you probably realise that 100% of nothing is really nothing.
Yeah.
And actually owning a stake in a business that will exit,
Yeah.
that will sell, where I will get a check and I'll have a future going forward.
Completely.
The percentage actually didn't matter so much.
No, the percentage is, if you think about pound sign, it's 180%, because of what it would have felt like. So for me, I didn't have that ego. I think that's also key. If you've got that ego where you just want to have it all, then this isn't the right thing to do.
100%.
And there are plenty of people that I've met that are only interested in saying, I have my own business, irrespective of what that means commercially or financially. I think when you meet people that have a more commercial mind and realise that having, a bigger part of something that can really leverage and actually exit is significantly more valuable than having 100% of it.
Can I say, Ben, we want to wish you every success in your journey going forward.
Thank you.
It's been a delight to have you as part of the family and part of the portfolio. And the next step of your career and the next part of this journey, may it be as successful as you've enjoyed with us.
Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks, James.
Excellent.
Thank you.